On the creative messaging side of things, we've always got a new message. Even if something worked one year, we can't do it the next year because it won't be new and it won't be breakthrough.
Welcome to the Incremental Marketer, a content series where we meet with top marketing executives and leaders across industries to help you drive growth in your business. Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're talking to Mandy Waldorf Graham. Mandy's the Executive Director of Strategy and Analytics at Drake Cooper. And we're excited to talk with Mandy about how brands can balance strategy and analytics, the evolving role of measurement, and what it takes to stay ahead in a data-driven world. Mandy, welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Happy to be here. In hearing that introduction, it really made me realize that early in my strategy career, analytics was a really big part of it. And they, everyone turned to the strategy team. And in fact, if you used to watch Mad Men, that was like those researchers were part of the strategy team. Researchers kind of evolved into strategists here in the US. And so that was a bigger part of what strategy did. And then it kind of separated off and attached itself more specifically to media. In the last 15 to 20 years. And yet now I see it kind of moving back. And there is, that nice full circle moment of part of my team are analysts that are deep in the data. And it's really nice having them so close. Instead of in the past, a lot of times it's been, you have to call your media contact, call the account person to call the media contact to get to the analyst. And I think that's where, you see a loss of that knowledge transfer into what you're creating at the creative agency when you don't have analytics really baked in.
So it's come full circle, and you're at Drake Cooper, which is an organization that sounds like it embraces that return to the way it maybe originally was meant to be. Can you just talk a bit about Drake Cooper and your role?
Yeah. So Drake Cooper is headquartered in Boise, Idaho. And it's been around for over 40 years. And they have a full service media arm. They've got a digital part of the agency. They've got a creative part of the agency. So it is one of those fully integrated creative agencies, versus what happened, in the last 20 years where you saw a lot of separation from creative and media operating in different places. And so you would, we still very much partner with outside media agencies, but because we have our own in-house media agency, we have our own in-house analytics team also. So we get to tap into those experts, even if on a specific client or project, we might not be scoped to do their analytics or their media.
It's so interesting. And so you have a creative team, you have an analytics team, you have been in the strategy function. Can you just connect how strategy, creative, and analytics has worked in organizations in the past? And maybe how is it different now and as you see this world evolving?
Yeah, it is interesting because as I said, in the old days when it was analytics part of strategy, I think there was a much closer tie between analytics and creative because you were really asking people about the creative because there weren't that many media options. Now there's so many more media options. Analytics has shifted and the emphasis is much more on which format, which channel, which platform. And it's a huge, extremely complex process to get all that data just to evaluate the media. And it feels like there's been less emphasis on using analytics to actually evaluate and give feedback on creative executions. And so that's where, I think the other thing that has shifted is, again, an emphasis in evaluating the media and an emphasis on analytics driving media strategy. And I think creative strategy has had that loss of analytics firepower. We are not getting as much emphasis on what does that mean for our upfront creative strategy and what should our messaging be. So that's something that we're working on at Drake Cooper is to bring analytics back up earlier in the process so that it can not even have an effect just on our creative strategy, but on our overall marketing strategy for our clients.
We were talking before we started rolling. How is creative able to leverage analytics? And is it possible to use analytics in a creative capacity? Or is it not quantifiable? Yeah, how have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely quantify. There's tons of creative testing tools and systems out there. One of the biggest challenges we have on the creative messaging side of things is that we've always got a new message, and we want to, just by the nature of what we're trying to do, which is to grab attention and break through, that even if something worked one year, we can't do it the next year because it won't be new and it won't be breakthrough. So that's where, there is kind of a fundamental difference between how analytics can optimize creative versus how analytics can optimize media. It's a little bit more concrete. You're going to have the same media spend, probably more media spend. You're going to be on the same channels, but you can continue to learn and apply that directly what you're doing to the next year versus in the creative department. You're going to have a completely new product. You're going to say something different about your product, and you want it to feel new and different. So the shelf life of those insights is a lot shorter when you are using analytics specifically to evaluate creative. But the difference would be in evaluating that upfront strategy, because the strategy is that more longer term thing you are committing to. And so that's where I see more of an immediate opportunity to better use analytics to not only just focus on optimizing our media and gaining efficiencies, understanding which audiences are going to have the biggest impact, which markets are going to have the biggest impact, but understanding what that overall marketing strategy, how that needs to evolve and optimize based on again, not only the media feedback, but sales data and website data, and really pulling all those things together is what our analytics team is working on. So really integrating those multiple sources to get a more long-term optimized strategy.
One thing you said was the creative being a different, almost deliverable internally to creative analytics from the strategy analytics. Are they different teams working on it, different skill sets, or are you integrating that function?
We do have a pretty balanced leadership team on all of our accounts, where you have a strategist, a creative, an account lead. So that creative lead is very much involved in those planning sessions, as much as our digital lead is involved in those longer term planning sessions. So understanding what are we doing next year? And really looking at that big picture of how is the business doing? How is the market changing? What are competitors doing? And so creatives are absolutely involved at that early, highest level of, approaching the marketing strategy for clients. It's more that when it gets down to really specifically briefing in, okay, here is the product that we need to advertise. That's where, the creative and analytics probably has a looser connection.
Right. Makes sense. And you've worn all the hats. I mean, in your experience, having worked with brands in your career. So you've been in a strategist function, leading strategy, there's creativity and storytelling involved. There's growth marketing. And so can you talk about a couple of client examples where you've seen them, fully embrace data and analytics? And then what are some of the gaps as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have two clients right now. I mean, I'll be honest, all of our clients are obsessed with data. So I could have a number of examples to give you. The one I'll talk about is an Idaho credit union, ICCU, Idaho Central Credit Union. And they are growing and they're continuing to grow. And so with that growth, they're needing to be much more strategic about which markets they're investing in, how are they investing. It's just getting a little bit more complex where the same playbook doesn't work for every market. And so we're seeing a lot more emphasis on okay, we need a market tiering recommendation. And so what's the, not just the data, but what's the criteria? What's our process? What's our formula for identifying this is the market where we're going to focus on business services. This is a market where we're going to focus on indirect lending. This is the market where we're going to focus on getting deposits. Which is the best season for us to focus on credit cards? Which is the best season for us to focus on getting new members? And so a much more like comprehensive strategic approach when you have a business that's so spread out in a region, and you have such a variety of audiences that you're trying to reach with such a variety of products. And so in that case, we've definitely invested more and more in our data and analytics team in understanding, again, not only how they're interacting with the media that we're placing, but also then how they're interacting with the website, how they're interacting at the branch locations, how they're interacting with the online sales team. So really pulling data from multiple sources to guide everything from, a new branch opening in a new market to what's our 2025 plan.
You're in the throes of kind of proving that what we're doing is working. And you see it, I guess, in many ways in a long time horizon. But how do you find that to be effective in the near term? What are ways that you can prove that something is working from that function that you're playing?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely that the marketers need to prove things are working quarter by quarter, and yet you build brands over years. So we do have one of our new clients this last year is Challenge Dairy, and they have some delicious butter, salted and unsalted. It at home in my refrigerator right now.
It's the best. Where are they based?
It's the one with the elk on it. It's not Land O'Lakes, which is based in Minnesota.
Thank you. Yes, exactly.
They are based in California. So a little rivalry here between California and Minnesota.
Right. We can't share any proprietary insights on this podcast.
But they are struggling with, how do they build their brand to rival Land O'Lakes and still meet their quarterly sales needs. They're a national brand without a national budget. And so how do they pick which regions they focus on? How do they know how long it's going to take to make an impact in that region versus they move, okay, how do you know, what do we give it? Like 2 months? And then we got to switch to another region. So we just had this challenge with them is identifying, here's where we start. These are the markets we're going to go with. And really dug in, as I said, to not only the media performance data, their sales data, their customer data, to understand I'm sure we'll talk about incrementality, which pieces are working and which pieces are not. And in this case, it was actually the marketing is doing exactly what it needs to do. But your competitor was half the price at the time of this campaign. And
right.
That's where there's only so much your ads can do when your competitor has cut their price by 50%.
You have to be responsive. I mean, it's a real-time market of competitor response.
Yeah.
So have you found yourself to be, as an organization, agile enough to respond? And how about your clients? Are they able to make changes? And how do you work with them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, in this case, we brought them this observation and looking at all the data that the problem, they're not seeing the sales they want. The problem isn't with the marketing ads that we're running and the media that we're running. The problem is with these other pieces of the puzzle. And so they were able to make changes, and we all held hands and we're like, no, we are staying the course. We're staying in these markets. We're staying with the plan that we put together, because the issue wasn't with the ads. And it was because of, really drilling down in the data and analytics of everything. We were able to prove that.
Yeah. And you spoke about incrementality. So is the understanding of incrementality within the strategy world the same as in the media world? How do you talk about incrementality from the top down, and when you're thinking about a strategic kickoff?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely those conversations you have at, for us, we do big annual planning for all of our clients. Every single client we have one time a year, we sit down, we look at the big picture, and that's when those kind of conversations come up is, what are we trying to achieve? What has been working for us in the past? And without having clear data to indicate that working or not working, those conversations are pretty pointless. And so it's, some of our clients, most of our clients have really invested in understanding what exactly in their mix is working and what isn't. And those that haven't, they just honestly are smaller budget, more simple, straightforward approaches where they are just kind of repeating the same thing every year.
We are all thinking about AI in our organizations. How is Drake Cooper embracing AI? How are you embracing it in your strategy and analytics role? And, what do you take away in terms of how AI will influence the strategy and the creative process?
Yeah, I mean, definitely AI is everywhere. I mean, try to not be using AI, I think is the bigger challenge these days. We are lucky enough to have an AI expert at Drake Cooper. She is running our MarTech offering, and she is keeping all of us up to date and helping us apply it in a responsible way. So one of the things we're doing is creating custom client-specific custom ChatGPT modules where we can insert, here are all the common language, here are the rules and the brand voice and the guidelines. And so we can test out strategy lines, we can test out copy lines, and it's all in our safe, protected environment. So that's one of the things that everybody at Drake Cooper is using for clients, where it's a nice testing ground to, kind of jam on stuff. It seems silly, like I'm jamming with AI, but they're going to catch me if I'm using the wrong language. Like, oh, I think you mean a home equity, loan versus a line of credit. It's gonna help, make sure that our first draft has gone through some rigor and some bulletproofing first. We're definitely using it in research as well. So we just did some qualitative, in fact, and so we're using AI to help us get that first draft of what themes did we hear in all of those conversations. Probably the most interesting way that we're using it is, again, these more custom, chat GPTs that we're putting together, where we can also, again, change the voice and the tone. Whether this is going to be a more formal strategy that needs to be more serious and straightforward, or if it can be a little bit more fun and playful. So really helping to spark creativity for the team. And again, feeling like I can actually put my brand proprietary private data, not just numbers, but information in this thing, and it's not going anywhere. So that was a thing that was really, a lot of people on my team were hesitant to use it. Please, this isn't going to go anywhere, right? No one is going to be learning from this. In research, we're also exploring not just using AI to analyze, but really advanced programming in actually conducting the research, conducting the interviews. And so that's something that we're just starting to try out and use a few different partners for. Because that's obviously that's frontline interfacing with consumers, and really needing it to feel like they are being interviewed by a human on the other side of it is really important.
That is powerful. And I imagine, do you have internally, do you have the voice of yourself as an AI? Are you Mandy AI?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not.
No, I'm just riffing off of, you have to scale yourself. So how do you personally scale yourself with AI? Have you tried that?
So, I mean, it is just the shortcuts that I talked about, where using AI to do that quick research on something before you're meeting with, a new client, and, not even a business pitch kind of thing, but just that quick, please AI help me understand what's going on in this marketplace really quickly. And so we do use a tool called Waldo AI, which is specifically using AI, but then also applying it to templates that you design. So you can kind of indicate, here are the boxes I want to have filled out with the analysis that you're doing. So it's a lot of that kind of shortcut on research and analysis is the way that we're using it to scale our team.
And is the creative team excited about it? How's it perceived? I know both internally and in your community more broadly. There's always in Hollywood challenges and concerns, but how do you find it to net out?
So I think creatives have been using AI for a few years already. For them, it's just like a serious tool. It's not a plaything. It's okay, I have an assignment and I've got a deadline. And so I'm using it to generate some headlines, or I need to comp something up and I don't have time to do it by hand. So it's going to be an AI version. What I'm excited to see is people outside of the creative department using it to make really great presentations. I'm seeing, much more creativity in presentations from outside the creative department. So that's why I've been excited to see people using AI in that creative capacity outside the creative department.
Exciting. And I'm really glad to hear you sit at that kind of perfect point to observe those trends and encourage the rest of the organization. Is there anything that you want to tell the audience, and just in terms of, we started the call talking about your 20 years of history in strategy and analytics, and they were separate functions. I mean, where do you see this conversation going 5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if anything, when we are talking about AI in particular, this is going to sound nerdy, but I really think that could be the thing that really brings teams together and creates more integration and more collaboration. Because in all those 20 years, those are always the best moments, or when you have teams that are truly collaborating and truly integrated, and nobody is being territorial or, strictly following job descriptions, and you are invited to really participate in every side of the marketing product that you're developing. And so I'm hoping that that's where things are going.
I love it. One last question I wanted to ask you, just in your experience, brands that embrace data and analytics and the ones that have done it the best, what do you think those organizations have evolved to become? Are they data driven and lost their creative edge, or have they found a way to blend those two things?
You're right. I mean, I think some are nailing it and some are not. I think there are things like DCO and very AI-driven efficiency models that are, doing their best on that lower, mid to lower funnel need. But I think that when it comes to upper funnel storytelling that needs to really engage and feel human and be able to connect to people, I don't know that, data is the answer for that part of the equation quite yet.
And can brand love be quantified?
We can quantify anything we want. So absolutely.
Thank you, Mandy. And we'll look forward to having you back, and we'll dig in on these trends in a future episode. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks so much.